So I know that this week and next week as well, it's a lot of reading, and I know it's really hard. And I know that this is kind of definitely the kind of stuff that we would be doing in class, and I'd be reading to you, and we'd be getting an understanding of these stories. So what I decided to do today was to actually go over this one with you, and I'm going to read it to you. I tried to find different people reading it to you so you wouldn't have my voice. Um, but I'm just going to do this like I would in class. So this is me teaching you guys just like we would have in class. Um, and what I'm going to do, and it's probably going to be a long video because it's a long poem, since y'all make fun of the way I say poem. It is very long. And so we are going to kind of get myself out of the way. I'm going to go over this with you. Get rid of myself. Okay, so today's poet is William Cullen Bryant, and you will notice that he was born November 3rd, 1794, and died very old in 1878. So he was in his 80s, and he is considered to be one of the founding American writers, especially poets. So little bit about him. We'll get back to that slide in a minute. He's the second son of a doctor and state legislator Peter Bryant and his wife Sarah Snell, whose actual ancestors were on the Mayflower. So he is a direct descendant of people who came over on the Mayflower. The poem that we're going to read today is called Thanatopsis. And just the title itself is a very interesting word, and we'll get to what it means. But he wrote Thanatopsis at the age of 16, which is insane to me because there's no way I would have been able to write this at 16. He was accepted to Yale but didn't attend due to financial issues. Although he didn't go to Yale, he still studied law, and at the age of 21, he passed the bar, which is the exam for becoming a lawyer, and practiced law for 10 years. After that, he became the editor for the New York Evening Post and held that position until his death. He helped establish many places in New York City, including Central Park, which we've all heard of Central Park, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, MoMA, and the New York Medical College. And obviously this picture down here is Central Park, and then you have MoMA and the medical college. So, and all of those are obviously still there, still going very strong. And he helped establish those things. So he is, there's a lot of schools that are named after him, especially in New York, but all over the place are named after Bryant. And it's just a really, really big deal. The New York Evening Post was one of the strongest publications at the time, newspapers at the time. So this is kind of a little bit about him. So he is considered to be an American romantic. And I feel like I'm just teaching class, but nobody's in front of me. When you think of romanticism, I don't want you to think like a romance novel. That is not what the romantics are. And these four things, I'm actually going to put this in the Google Classroom, just this one slide, separate from this slide, but it will be in this as well, because this is one of the ones that you're going to have to refer back to with all of the reading that we're doing in the next few weeks, and including the ones you just did. So there's four things to the American romanticism. And I kind of inferred to this earlier this week when I said that the founding fathers honestly believed that there was logic and reason for everything that we were doing at the time, that we should all get together and we should fight, and we should do it for the good of the whole of the country. And the romantics came after them, and they were kind of like, whoa, back up. You need to care about yourself, and you need to worry about your own feelings and your own intuition and your feelings and how you feel about something and your inner self. That matters more than facts and reason. I kind of get along much better with these guys as far as my thoughts. I am very much someone who is motivated by feelings and intuition. So they believe that there was faith in imagination, inner experience, and youthful innocence rather than just being highly educated. Yes, most of these guys had a higher education, but some of them did not. And some of our biggies did not have a higher education. But what they would do is they would go into the natural world. They would go into the woods and they would go into the, at lakes and ponds and stuff like that. And they would investigate what nature had to teach them more than what just the textbooks had to teach them. And so they honestly believed, and this last one is one that I always kind of look at as an opposite from our founding fathers, that they believed that the individual freedom and worth was more important than the whole of the country. So a very, very different mindset than our founding fathers. So these guys are kind of the beginning of a change in the way writing is coming in. And this is more of what we read pretty much in everything we do now. All right. So this is kind of where you kind of need to start thinking before you even read this poem is what are the thoughts that you have about death? And I know that nobody wants to talk about death and nobody wants to, especially now, because it is kind of in our face about society and people are dying and things they can't control. And it's very, very sad. And so it does kind of come up. My son and I had this conversation today. He was talking about Kobe and Gigi and were they able to play basketball in heaven? And so, we have questions like that, like what's going to happen when we die? Where do we go when we die? I think a lot of us are when or how will we die? And will anybody mourn my death? Will anybody come to my funeral? What happens to our bodies after we die? Is there an afterlife or a reincarnation? And will we know each other in the afterlife if there is one? And so those are like some of the biggies in life. And the romantics actually answered these questions based on what they learned by going out into nature. And they answered these questions based on, with the things that they researched. It may not have been of as much on, a book and texts and knowledge that they gleaned from science, but actually what they gleaned from going out in nature and finding the answers. So Bryant was 16 when he wrote this poem we're going to read today, Thanatopsis. And he wrote it based on how he sees death. Because Thana means death in Greek and opis means sight. And he pretty much made up the word Thanatopsis. And it means how he actually sees death. These are his thoughts. And it's considered to be an elegy because it's a poem of serious reflection that talks about the dead. And it is a serious poem about death and his thoughts. All right, so I'm going to read it to you. It is very long. Stick with me. Listen to how it sounds. And then we will actually go back and I'll go over what it means. And this is exactly what we would have done in class, except we actually would have talked about death before we even got to this. This is one of my sad classes. I know if you've ever heard anybody talk about my class, they tell you, my class will make you cry. This is when we have the conversation. This is when we get to be sad. So I'm just going to read this through. Then I'm going to back up and I'm going to talk about it. So listen to the whole thing and read along. It'll be on the screen for you. And then we will talk about it in depth after I read it, just in the whole, okay? Ready? Thanatopsis. To him who in the love of nature holds communion with her visible forms, she speaks a various language. For his gayer hours, she has a voice of gladness, and a smile and eloquence of beauty. And she glides into his darker musings with a mild and healing sympathy that steals away their sharpness ere he is aware. When thoughts of the last bitter hour come like a blight over thy spirit, and sad images of stern agony, and shroud, and pall, and breathless darkness, and the narrow house make thee to shudder and grow sick at heart, go forth under the open sky, and list to nature's teachings, while from all around earth and her waters and the depths of air comes a still voice. Yet a few days, and thee the all-beholding sun shall see no more in all his course, nor yet in the cold ground where thy pale form was laid with many tears, nor in the embrace of ocean shall exist thy image. Earth, that nourished thee, shall claim thy growth to be resolved to earth again, and lost each human trace, surrendering up thine individual being, shalt thou go to mix forever with the elements, to be a brother to the insensible rock and to the sluggish clod, which the rude swain turns with his share and treads upon. The oak shall send his roots abroad and pierce thy mold. Yet not to thine eternal resting place shalt thou retire alone, nor couldst thou wish a couch more magnificent. Thou shalt lie down with the patriarchs of the infant world, with kings, the powerful of the earth, the wise, the good, fair forms, and hoary seers of ages past, all in one mighty sepulchre. The hills, rock-ribbed and ancient as the sun, the vales stretching in pensive quietness between, the venerable woods, rivers that move in majesty, and the complaining brooks that make the meadows green and poured round all, old ocean's gray and melancholy waste, are but the solemn decorations all of the great tomb of man. The golden sun, the planets, all the infinite host of heaven are shining on the sad abodes of death through the still lapse of ages. All that tread the globe are but a handful to the tribes that slumber in its bosom. Take the wings of morning, pierce the barren wilderness, or lose thyself in continuous woods where rolls the Oregon and hears no sound save his own dashings. Yet the dead are there, and millions in those solitudes since first the flight of years began have laid them down in their last sleep. The dead reign there alone. So shalt thou rest. And what if thou withdraw in silence from the living, and no friend take note of thy departure? All that breathe will share thy destiny. The gay will laugh when thou art gone, the solemn brood of care plod on, and each one, as before, will chase his favorite phantom. Yet all these shall leave their mirth and their employments, and shall come and make their bed with thee. As the long train of ages glide away, the sons of men, the youth in life's green spring, and he who goes in full strength of years, matron and maid, the speechless babe, and the gray-headed man, shall one by one be gathered to thy side by those who in their turn shall follow them. So live, that when thy summons comes to join the innumerable caravan, which moves to that mysterious realm, where each shall take his chamber in the silent halls of death, thou go not like the quarry slave at night, scourged to his dungeon, but sustained and soothed by an unfaltering trust. Approach thy grave like one who wraps the drapery of his couch about him and lies down to pleasant dreams. Okay, so let's talk about this. So this is how he saw death at 16. And there's a lot of questions that he answers in here. And there's a lot of things that you can tell that his brain was kind of just on this loop of what would happen if he died, what would happen to our body, what would happen to us. So what we're going to see, we're going to go through it kind of not really line by line, but kind of sections. All right. So let's start with this one. All right. To him who in the love of nature holds communion with her visible forms. All right. So we just talked about when we were going over this part, how the romantics like to go outside and they like to see. And this is one of those things where you just kind of have to know that these guys are going to use their imagination, their inner experience, youthful innocence. They're going to go outside in the world, and that's how they're going to learn. And that's what he's talking about. So him who in the love of nature holds communion with her visible forms. In other words, that you're going outside and you're listening to how the earth and nature kind of what it has to teach you. But that nature will actually speak to you in a various language. Now, what year was this guy born? Go back. 1794. So he would have written this in 1810. Now, there's a difference between connotation and denotation. Connotation is what words mean in society today, but denotation is the dictionary definition. So if we're thinking, what does gay mean by the denotation when he would have written this in 1810? It means for when you're in a good mood, when you're happy. So for your happy hours, nature will talk to you and make you even happier and will make you smile and you'll see all the beauty of nature. And we know that because we go outside when we're in a good mood and we want to run around and kind of act like kids again. And we chase the butterflies and we see the flowers and all of that and we're happy. And nature makes us happier. But what happens when we are in our dark musings, which means when we're sad? When you're sad, if you go outside, nature will give you a mild and healing sympathy. And the longer you're outside, you don't even know what's happening. Nature will calm you down. A lot of us, when we're in a bad mood and we're having a bad day, we'll go outside, we'll sit in the shade, and we'll just kind of chill. And eventually we start feeling better. And that's somebody who does love nature and who goes out, and no matter what our mood is, nature's going to make us feel relaxed and feel good about ourselves. So that's kind of like his intro paragraph, what he's going to talk about, that he went out into nature and that nature helped him come up with when the thoughts of the last bitter hour come like a blight over thy spirit. When you get thinking about death and you're very sad and you think about the shroud and the pall, okay, those are the things they lay over the bodies when they die. The breathless darkness. Now, I will tell y'all, one of my biggest fears about death is being buried. I have a major just fear of being in the ground and being in the narrow house. Do you know what the narrow house is? That's your coffin. And a lot of people, myself included, one of my fears about death is that I'll be buried in the ground in a little coffin and people walk over my body. I know that's crazy and it's insane, but it's my thought. And when I do think about it, I get very, very sick at heart and I start to kind of have a little bit of a panic attack and I shudder. So what he's saying is that when we are having these thoughts, these very scary thoughts of death, that we should go forth under the open sky and listen. That really means listen to nature's teaching, because eventually there will be a still voice that will calm us down, because he said up here that those of us who love nature, that we go outside and no matter how we feel, that it will calm us down. So when thoughts of the last bitter hour come, so this is him saying, when I'm freaking out about death, when I'm freaking out about what's going to happen, I'm going to go outside and I'm going to get under the big open sky and I'm going to listen to nature's teachings. So this is what he learned. All right, so after you die, within a few days, obviously you won't be seen anymore. Now in 1810, obviously they would have buried these guys. They would have put them in a wooden coffin. We all know that eventually the wood deteriorates and we would go back into the earth. And that's what this line means. Earth that nourished thee shall claim thy growth to be resolved to earth again. That we will go back into the earth. We'll mix forever with the elements. Okay, our body actually itself would have mixed into the ground and all of that. And that's pretty much what he's saying here. So his response to what happens to our body is that eventually we will mix forever with the elements, become the dirt, the oak, like an oak tree, could even put the roots through our coffin. Because again, this would have been made of wood and it would have eventually deteriorated. So he answers that question, what happens to our body? Yet not to thine eternal resting place shall thou retire alone. One of the things that we are terrified of with dying is that we're going to die alone. You will never find a couch more magnificent. Now I'm sitting on my couch, as evident of the cat who's in the chair, and I love my couch and it's very, very, very comfortable. So who's going to be lying in the ground with us? Well, everybody. The kings, the wise, the good, people of ages past, and it's all in one mighty sepulcher, which is earth, because all of us get put back in the earth, especially in 1810. Now I know that in 2020, we're put in a different type of coffin, and some of us won't be buried in the ground, we'll be in a mausoleum. Some of us will be cremated and stuff like that. But in 1810, you got to remember, we're talking about 1810, that they all would have been put in the earth the same way. So we all become part of earth again. So that's his answer. And we're not being put there alone. We're actually being put there with everyone else. And he'll say that again in a second too. So then he starts talking about the great tomb of man. Now we all know what the tomb is, and our tomb in 1810, what we would have been put in, that's what a tomb is, would be put back into the ground. And he's saying that all of the earth is the decoration for our tomb. Because we're put back in the earth, we have the sun decorating our tomb, planets, every single thing in the earth. And that's pretty much what this whole section is talking about here, is that the earth is our tomb. And it's this really cool, beautiful decoration. So then he says down here, and yet the dead are there in millions in the solitude, since first the flights of year began, have laid them down in their last sleep. The dead reign there alone. So basically, again, he's saying you won't be alone, because every single person ever until this moment has been put into the earth. And if you actually think about that, it's kind of cool. There are more people buried in the earth than are walking the earth. So you'll never be alone. All right, so here's another fear. It starts right here with this so shalt thou rest. And what if thou withdraw in silence from the living, and no friend take note of thy departure? That is another huge fear that people have. What if I die and nobody cares? Will I die alone? What if I die alone? What if no one comes to my funeral? Well, he's saying you don't have to worry about that, because all that breathe will share thy destiny. What's the one guarantee about everyone who's born? They will die. I told y'all this is just very sad. It's cool in the fact of he's given us these answers and that nobody's ever alone. But he does kind of say that we're all going to share the destiny of death, which is true. The happy, again, denotation and connotation, the happy will laugh when thou art gone, and the solemn brood will care will plod on, and each one as before will chase his favorite phantom. Y'all, unfortunately, and I know we all are like, oh, when I die, you're not gonna be able to live on. But no, the earth will continue. If we were to die today, everybody would continue with their life. Yes, they would be sad, but they would continue to plod on, and they would continue to go on as before. But eventually, yet all of these shall leave their mirth and their employments, and shall come and make their bed with thee, because every person that is breathing will die. The long train of ages glide away, the son of men and the youth in life's green spring, and he that goes. Okay, these are all different people. Okay, so sons, youth, unfortunately, we all know that people your age die. He that goes in the full strength of years is somebody who's like in their 20s or 30s, who's like in good health and they pass away. A matron is someone who is a female who's married. A maid is a female who's not married. So married women die, unmarried women die. This one is really sad. The speechless babe would be a baby who would either a miscarriage, a stillbirth, or someone at a very, very young age who wasn't even speaking yet died. And we do know that happens too. And that's so sad. Or even the gray-headed man or woman, basically somebody who's lived a long life. Shall one by one be gathered to thy side. And every person will follow. So you will never, this part of it, what if thou withdraw in silence from the living and no friend take note of thy departure? It doesn't matter because they'll all be with you eventually. All right. So then hey guys. All right. She's getting back in my chair. Okay. So this is where we left off. Sorry. I don't know what my computer did. You'd think at midnight nobody would be on the internet, but it shut me down. Okay, so this is where we left off, and I was talking about how this is a separate section. It's a totally different stanza, and he flips how the whole thing is. Everything prior to this was, what happens when we die, what happens in death, and all that. And this is actually how should we live. So we need to live in a way where we need to live in a way that we don't act like, oh, woe is me, my life is horrible, such as the quarry slave at night scorns to his dungeon. When they walk to the dungeon, they're dragging their feet and they don't want to go, and they're horrible. And it was a horrible existence. But that's not how we should. That when we die, JD's blanket, that we should live in a way where we'll just lay down on our couch and snuggle up just like we would going to bed at night in our favorite place to sleep, whether it's your bed or your couch or whatever. And that's how we should live, that we've lived so well with an unfaltering trust, that we don't worry about death and that we're not scared of death, but that we live to the point that when it's time for us to die, that we actually die happy about how we've lived, and that we'll lie down and say, okay, I'm ready. So live and enjoy life and don't fear death. And it really will be okay. So I know that this was a very, very long video, and if you stuck with me, it'll help you understand this poem. It will help you. Hopefully, maybe it'll even help you live a better life. So that was his point, and that was his goal, was to help. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I know it was long, and I'm sorry. Obviously, my internet was telling me it was too long because it shut me off. So I love you guys. Keep smiling. And if you have any questions,